What's going on YouTube? It's Teej back again with another video, and today we're going through my Week 12 NFL Power Rankings, another exciting week of NFL action and a fair amount of movement, especially in the top 5, which I'm excited to talk about, but hopefully you will enjoy today's video. If you do, be sure to hit that like button. If you're new around here, be sure to hit that big red subscribe button as well, and give me your Power Rankings down below. Who do you think makes up the top 5? Who's your favorite team? Where do you think they fit in the mix? I'd love to have your thoughts. I respond to every comment, so let's talk about it down below. But, not a lot that changes at the bottom, so we'll kind of go, speed round here. Sorry if you are a fan of one of these teams, but Houston, get the pick 6 on the first play from scrimmage from Davis Mills. Apparently there might be a QB change being made there. I don't think Kyle Allen changes much. Just a bad team that should continue losing games so they can get their choice of, CJ Stroud, Will Levis, Bryce Young, whoever at the first overall pick. The Bears, I'm still encouraged by what I'm seeing from Justin Fields. We're seeing growth. Still feels like an offense that needs a little bit more help, right? Both in pass protection, especially against that Dean Pease defense where they bring a whole lot of different looks and a lot of different blitzes at you, and you could see that Bears offensive line struggling. So could use some still need some help there, and could use another pass catcher, of course, and that defense too. It's kind of unfortunate because I love Cordero Patterson and I have no bias against either one of those two teams, but if not for that kick return, we're talking about the Bears moving up this list. So some little things like that. And, they're a bad team. Again, kind of a similar spot as the Texans. Embrace losing games, get a high draft pick, make that team better in the long run. Panthers, same thing. Baker Mayfield still looks like, honestly, a disaster, right? So I'm kind of hoping we see PJ Walker just because at least there's some variance there. There might be a week where it looks pretty good. There's also going to be weeks where, like the first half of the Bengals could certainly happen. But Baker's just not it right now, and that's tough because that dude has got good play under his belt, back in Cleveland. It'll be interesting to see where he goes this next offseason, but yeah, this Carolina team's just not a good squad. Broncos and Raiders also stand put. They played each other, and the Raiders beat one of the teams right below them. So, I didn't feel the need to move either one of them. I still don't think they're very good. This is multiple weeks in a row where betting the under with whoever the Broncos are playing is a solid betting strategy. I encourage you to do the same thing. And this game went to overtime. Had a walk-off touchdown, and the under still hit by 3 points. So, yeah, the Broncos offense continues to struggle. It'll be interesting to see how Nathaniel Hackett, I do want to give him credit. I think as a head coach, he's done a really good job not being prideful. I think if you tell me you've never had a prideful moment, I'm going to call you a liar because we all have at least once in our life, right? So for him to, bring on somebody to help with the game management stuff, and now he's given up play calling. Now, I'm not a crazy Clint Kubiak guy. I didn't really love his work in Minnesota. Thought he brought out some more of the conservative side of Kirk, which we're starting to see him play a little bit more aggressive, and I think they've gotten more out of him because of it. But you needed to change something, right? So I appreciate him not being like, hey, no, I was hired here. It's my offense. I'm going to do it. He was willing to pass that torch to someone else and trying to do what he can to make this team better. And then for the Raiders, when Derek Carr is thrown into Devontae Adams, good things tend to happen. So I hope to see a whole lot more of that moving forward. And the team overcame, they have a bad offensive line. Their defense isn't all that great. And they still bottled up, a Denver offense that was missing a lot of wide receiver talent, especially this week, but still has some explosiveness, still has some firepower, still has Courtland Sutton. Got a timely turnover from Melvin Gordon. He's good for that once a week, it feels. So, made just enough plays. And again, Derek Carr to DA. That's a magical connection. So I don't know how much longer we'll be seeing it, but those two definitely still have some great chemistry lingering from college. And then the Jags were on bye, so they stay put at 27. Steelers down a spot. Them and the Bengals just don't feel they're heading in different directions, right? Since he's mounting, that postseason campaign and March trying to get momentum on their side. Pittsburgh should be another one of those teams that's embracing, high draft pick. Let's go draft, a tackle in the top 10. Let's go draft a corner, something along those lines. Or, hey, maybe we're in the top 5 and let's go draft the best player available, So you also have another second round pick from Chicago. So, 1 year with a solid draft and, solid moves and in free agency, not throwing money away, not just shelling out big contracts for the sake of big contracts, but smart financial decisions, good signings, and good smart draft picks, and I think this team's right back on track. So down year this year for Pittsburgh, but I think Tom will have them back on track pretty quick. And then we get to the Browns, and I mean, Nick Chubb's bottled up, Jacoby Brissett's not looking great. Just a tough day, other than Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper, did his thing. So they did have that one bright spot, but, that defense too, like Joe Woods, there were a couple weeks where I felt like, okay, the seats, feeling like a little less hot, but yeah, it's right back there. It's scorching. I have a hard time thinking he's going to be their DC next year, so that's strictly speculation. But yeah, another tough week for that defense. It did take Buffalo a little bit to get going, so, maybe it was just, the Bills made some right adjustments. But yeah, just another tough week for the Browns, and I think this pretty much, even when they get Deshaun Watson back, I just have a hard time seeing them make the playoffs, though. You can never count it out. Then we get into the 17 through 24 grouping here. Rams are a bad football team. Matt Stafford was playing maybe his best game of the season prior to him getting hurt, so that's unfortunate. They even got production at Tutu Atwell, which is exciting. But that other corner spot, Jalen Ramsey gets burnt in this game. We're going to Bryce Perkins, your third string quarterback. The offensive line's still atrocious. I mean, there's superstars in this team that obviously make them a pretty good roster because they have a Jalen Ramsey and Aaron Donald and things like that. But you're down Cooper Kupp. You have all those weak spots I've already mentioned. It's just not a team that they're not the same reigning Super Bowl champs. They're not the same team that they were last year. Falcons up a spot. Want to give them credit. Got some timely turnovers. Got that late pick. It was an errant pass from Justin Fields, but it was also a catchable pass at the same point. But, hey, pops out of their hands, and the Falcons jump on it to make a play. Got Cordero Patterson back there. He's NFL record holder now for kickoff returns. He's, to me, the best kickoff returner of all time. So they're finding ways to engineer offense. And what's also an encouraging sign, the reason they can move CP back to that kick return spot is because Tyler Algier and crew, they've gotten production from younger running backs and maybe the guys you weren't expecting to be the starter coming into the year. So, and then you got Marcus Mariota incorporated the run game that continues to be a really potent mix to that offense. So this is one of those teams where they're kind of like a poor man's Eagles offense where they can just win a variety of ways. They can pound the rock. I don't think Mariota can sling it quite like Jalen Hurts. So, again, it's the poor man's version, but they can use that read option game, force defenses to be on their heels, and you have to stop them in a variety of ways, which makes that offense that much harder to stop. And I think they're just gonna be a tough team. You're not gonna be able to put them away in a lot of games. So I think they're gonna be kind of scrappy the rest of the way. And then the Commanders up a handful of spots. The defense continues to get better and better. You look at maybe the first 4 to 5 weeks versus what we've seen over the last 4 to 5 weeks. It looks like a completely different unit, which is great. I was the guy calling out for Jack Del Rio's job, maybe even Ron Rivera. So it's encouraging to see them kind of turn that around. Taylor Heineke is bad, but comparing him to another quarterback we'll talk about later, at least he's bad but likable, which is more than hey, Zach Wilson can say, which again we'll talk about that later on. But just enough big plays. The run game was efficient enough. You got Brian Robinson shedding off 5 tackles on a play to convert a 3rd and 2. I mean, that's why this team's going to continue to win games. They're going to put the ball in the running back's hands 40-50 times a game, more than likely. Get enough timely throws from Taylor Heineke, lean on that defense. They're going to get Chase Young back next week. This team's going to continue to be pretty good. I mean, their schedule moving forward, a handful of division games, but it's not out of the realm of possibility this team's over 500 by year's end, which is way more than I would have anticipated beginning this season. Then we get to the Cardinals down a couple spots. That game was brutal last night. When Brock Purdy's coming into a game, the 49ers really had their way with you. So, just a tough showing. But, no Kyler Murray, right? I actually had a handful of bets. Colt McCoy pass attempts, and I still don't think Colt McCoy's all that bad, but he's one of those, mid-tier backup quarterbacks. So what does that make him? QB 40 to 45 in the league. Not a great option. DeAndre Hopkins continues to try to do as much as he can, but only so much one guy can do on that offense. And the defense, I say this all the time. I feel like Vance Joseph's doing as much as he can with not enough talent on that side of the ball. I know they have 2 first-round picks at linebacker, but those are 2 of the more questionable first-round picks from those drafts. I'm still encouraged to see what Isaiah Simmons grows into, but outside of those 2 guys, J.J. Watt still playing okay football, Byron Murphy, Budda Baker, there's just not enough there. And I think we really saw that on display. And also, they just ran into a buzzsaw with the San Francisco offense that was clicking on all cylinders. So sometimes it's just a bad draw. Then we get the Colts down a couple spots as well. And, they hung tough with Philly. Thought about keeping them right there at 18. But they'd ultimately lose this game. But even with the loss, if you're an Indy fan, you're still right in that mix for the AFC wild card, which, you're gonna have to play some really good football moving forward the rest of the year if you're going to get in the postseason. I don't think it's all that likely, but 3 teams from the AFC East right now populate the wild card, and how likely is that to continue? So feels like something that's going to regress there, and there might be an opening there for Indy to take advantage of. Also, at the fight off, a team like a Baltimore or Cincy, whoever doesn't win the North, yada yada yada, all that tangent aside, the offense looks significantly better with Matt Ryan, and they're getting. I wish they got a little bit more out of Jonathan Taylor, to be honest with you. That first drive and then everything else afterwards it left more to be desired as the game went on and on and on. So the offensive line's still not quite, at maybe what our preseason perception of what the team would be. But nonetheless, Matt Ryan, I think, changes enough, right? And he's making enough big throws. He's moving the chains just enough. This team is kind of like Atlanta, where they're going to be scrappy. They're going to be tough to put away. Then we get to the Lions, up another 3 spots. Jamal Williams, actually just acquired him in my main fantasy leagues. 3 touchdowns. Good time to make that move. So that's an exciting move. And, I think the more we see Jamal Williams over DeAndre Swift, that's probably better for both, right? Like, DeAndre Swift is this awesome offensive weapon. but he has a hard time staying on the field. So maybe a smaller role, and primarily one that lives in the pass game, is the way where you can keep him on the field, maximize his value. And then Jamal Williams is your lead back. And, I go back, small tangent here, I go back to the year the Steelers drafted Najee Harris. My dream, scenario was Pittsburgh drafts a corner like a Greg Newsome in the first round, signs a Jamal Williams of free agency. Obviously, the NFL works free agency than draft, but you get what I'm saying. And I just thought that was a better way of allocating those resources. Instead, no corner signed, and they draft a running back. So we see Pittsburgh suffering from that at 26 here in these power rankings, but, not out of it. I think they'll be okay down the line. Give them another year or two. But anyways, to get back on track here, the Lions in their defense, I said this last week, their defense is creating turnovers, and that's the biggest thing that's changed, I think, over the first, 6-7 weeks where that defense was historically terrible to what we've seen over the last couple of weeks. They're generating turnovers, and give a ton of credit to Aiden Hutchinson, a defensive end with a couple of picks this year. Not something I anticipated having on his stat line, but that with, an improving pass rush win rate, some more sacks, more hurries, pressures, all that sort of stuff, he's making a solid campaign for Defensive Rookie of the Year. The Saints up 3 spots, Andy Dalton, is not great. I will say that off top, but he's played some pretty decent football this year. He's hit some big throws, including that one to Chris Olave that's in the picture on your screen. So, he's doing just enough. And, I know that Rams team is a shell of what they were last year, but this is a nice win for New Orleans, and they get the job done at home, and, get Jarvis Landry into the end zone. Nice building blocks there from the Saints. So, I don't think this is going to be their, beginning of their march to the Super Bowl or anything like that, but it's a solid win in and of itself. And the Packers, they did lose. I'm going to keep them here at 17. Just felt like a rough matchup right there. This is a team that struggles against the run. Derrick Henry had his way, and also, maybe the best game of Ryan Tannehill's, Tennessee tenure. I think that's up for debate, which we'll talk about Tennessee in a little bit, but, I think the Packers called a hot Tannehill, an efficient run game, and it was just tough for that offense to keep up. Now, that being said, it was good to see Randall Cobb back in the lineup. And it was also nice to see Christian Watson find the end zone 2 more times, and especially still using those crossing routes, which I think is the best way to maximize his value, at least early on here in his rookie year. I'm excited to see what the second half brings for Christian Watson. The dude could put up some crazy numbers, picked him up in a couple fantasy leagues. I implore you to do the same. We're on to the top 16 now. Tampa Bay was on bye, so they're going to stick put at 16. Giants, Jets both fall a spot. The Giants lose to the Lions. Some crazy wins in that game, and honestly, we all kind of anticipated the Giants kind of regress to the mean, so it's about time. I still think they're a good football team. It was just one of those weeks where, Brian Daboll scrapping to find any and all advantages to find a win, and this was just a week where he didn't find anything. So, tough result there for the Giants. And then the Jets, Zach Wilson. You compare him to Taylor Heineke. I think Zach Wilson has more talent in his body, but after the post-game presser where he's like, do you feel like the offense let the defense down? And the answer is no. That's the exact wrong answer. I don't even play in the NFL, and I can tell you that. Anytime the offense, anytime you don't win a game and it's low scoring like that, the answer should be yes. It's just as simple as that. What would Peyton Manning do? What would Tom Brady say? What would, Drew Brees say? It's just, even if you don't mean it, it's just what you got to say there at the podium. So, tough look there, and that offense is struggling. You got Garrett Wilson saying this is unacceptable. I don't know. And now, Zach Wilson might not even be starting next week. This could be the Mike White, Joe Flacco show. And I'm interested to see, just because, one, let me just start with this. Jimmy Garoppolo, go ahead if you can bet it. I think he's the quarterback of the Jets next year. It makes too much sense. The connections are there. And this team really just needs a facilitator. They just need a point guard, basically, for this offense that isn't looking to score 20 a game, instead just trying to pick up 10, 15 assists a night, using a basketball analogy there. They just need somebody to get the ball out to Garrett Wilson, get the ball next year when they have Breece Hall back, just move the ball around, get the ball into their playmakers' hands, because they have a nice assortment of weapons, I think. And I think that'll become even more prevalent when they have a quarterback who can actually elevate their level of play. So it's just tough. And, I'm somebody who was on the Jets plus 3.5 this past week. And, part of that was I was thinking, hey, Zach Wilson's had enough moments in the fourth quarter. He did it against the Steelers. He did it against the Bills. Maybe he can have a late moment. He was the complete antithesis of clutch this week. And then at the podium, he makes it even worse. So, yeah, tough to buy the Jets right now. They're only down a spot, but we'll see. The quarterback change to me, this is the time to make it. He's not the guy moving forward. Sorry. Then we got the Titans up, handful of spots, and again, Ryan Tannehill, that might have been the best game of his Titans, tenure. And that's saying something, because when he first got there in that second season, and when Arthur Smith was still his OC, that dude was dropping dimes left and right. And he was one of the best quarterbacks in the league. He's not elite based off of talent and skills or whatever, but his production and his efficiency were some of the best in the league. And he put a buzzsaw to that Green Bay defense. So I was really impressed. Even on that first touchdown pass, right? It's the running back coming out of the backfield, fakes to his left, cuts up the field, and Tannehill just put it on the money, splitting the zone defenders, and Dontrell Hilliard gets the touchdown because of it. So I was just thoroughly impressed with what I saw from Tannehill, and if he plays like that moving forward, that's big. Even on the hurry up offense, me, Mason, and JT were talking about, the reason I think Green Bay, covers is I'm not buying into Tannehill. It's just not the same guy. boy, did he prove me wrong. So a ton of credit there, and you're still got an efficient run game there with Henry and also Dontrell Hilliard. I think he's been a nice component, added that offense. And then the other big story, if it's not Ryan Tannehill, Treylon Burks, 100+ receiving yards, like 7 catches. Yeah, it was really good to see him come back from injury, a couple weeks ago, and now could be stepping into that wide receiver 1 role for this offense, which makes this team that much more legit on that side of the ball. And the defense is still putting it together. And this was a game without Jeffrey Simmons, and I still think they did a pretty good job against a good, I don't want to say good Green Bay offense, but a Green Bay offense that's coming off their best game of the season against a really good Dallas defense. More on Dallas in a minute, but this was a game that easily could have continued the Green Bay momentum, but the Titans put a halt to that. So ton of credit, especially when you do it without your best defensive player in Jeffrey Simmons. Patriots, yeah, they won, but they won because of a Marcus Jones punt return. A W is a W. Anytime, especially when it comes in a divisional game, that was not pretty. So I'm going to keep them at 12, but I'm not going to move them up because of that dub. Seahawks were on bye, so they're going to stay at 11. Chargers lost, but every time I watch the Chargers-Chiefs, these are the games that reel me back into believing the Chargers could be a legit contender. Because I'm like, dude, look, they're going toe-to-toe with, spoiler alert, the number 1 team in these power rankings. Like, they lead. And actually, I saw an unbelievable stat. Every time Herbert's gone head-to-head with Mahomes, Herbert had led the half. And Mahomes finds a way to almost, I don't know the exact winning percentage, but it feels like 75% to 80% of the time, Mahomes is the one coming away with the win at the end of the game. So it's just, Chargers are going to charge. They've got to find ways to execute and come up with big plays late in the second half. And, it's a little unfortunate because, they take the lead, but there's a little more than 100 seconds to go. And for Pat Mahomes, that's just too much. So, tough result there for the Chargers. But, I think the offense really showcased what it could potentially be, and it's good to see Keenan Allen almost 100 yards in his return, and he was still on the snap count. So think about once he's back and playing every down. Hopefully they get Mike Williams back. I mean, it's gonna be tough. I'm not sure we're gonna see him, at least not anytime soon, because comes down with an unbelievable toe tap catch on the sideline and immediately has to exit the game because of his ankle being re-aggravated. So that's tough. And anytime it's a re-aggravation of an injury, it feels like it's that much more long of a prolonged wait. So I hope we see Mike Williams because, what we did get to see was really impressive, and that offense just looks so much better when he's out there. And then you have to deal with him and Keenan Allen, which makes that offense more legit. And also this defense needs to figure out some stops. Like late in the second half, I know it's Kansas City, but you got to be able to find a way to, at least stall out one drive, right? And I know they have no Joey Bosa, but, Brandon Staley was defensive head coach. You got to find an answer there. And the Cincinnati Bengals are going to stay at 9 just because I like my top 8, but there is certainly an argument that this should be moved up. Anytime you can win a game in Pittsburgh against a division rival, that's a solid win to have. So, want to give a ton of credit here to the Bengals and Samaje Perine, especially if Joe Mixon misses time. It was really good to see him have some nice production. Part of it's Pittsburgh ignoring to defend the flat, so Perine gets a couple touchdowns because of it, but that's just what they need, right? And then T. Higgins goes off for $150. Great to see him kind of step into that wide receiver 1 role and showcase, yeah, I can do this. They even got, Irwin doing some things, and Tyler Boyd had a couple of drops, but still a factor there out of the slot. So they're piecing together, and it's another win in the life without Jamar Chase, which anytime you can do that, that's a big move there for the Bengals. Let's move on to the top 8 now. The Dolphins were on bye, but I'm going to move them down just because of the shuffling. I still love this team a ton. Ravens actually did beat Carolina, but if you're beating Carolina 13-3 at home, yeah, that's not a win I'd brag about. So it took a while to get that offense going. Did generate some big plays from some of their wide receivers, which is an encouraging sign considering that is the most glaring weakness on that team. But yeah, that offense just still not living up to what it fully could be, right? Because we think about, when Lamar Jackson is playing at his absolute best, he's, a reigning, or 2019 MVP, right? Like he's an MVP winner. There's only so many of those guys still playing. And because of that, he can do so much. And he can completely change the complexion of that offense. But another week where it's like, hey, the Ravens, not living up to what that offense really should be. So that does concern me a little bit. So I didn't move them down despite the win. And again, you beat Carolina by 10 at home, And it'd be one thing if it was 31-21, late push from Carolina, but it's pretty close to the majority of the game. And 13-3, they kind of pulled away very late. And again, at home against Carolina, number 30 team in these power rankings, it's not a win I'd brag about. And the 49ers, they have a win they could brag about. But, the Cardinals are kind of disheveled right now. And, Colt McCoy, not Kyler Murray, and, the piece in the defense just aren't enough. I do want to give credit though, and part of the reason I thought about maybe switching the Niners and the Vikings, which we'll talk about that in a moment when I get to Minnesota, but this was finally a game where it was like Kittle was involved. He found the end zone. Ayuk finds the end zone twice. Debo was, both a runner and a pass catcher. Christian McCaffrey had 5 catches in the first half. I mean, this was the first time in a while I've seen Kyle Shanahan utilize every tool in the toolbox, which is a great sign because he's an awesome OC. He's a great play caller, and he comes from a great lineage of offensive minds for sure. but he does have a tendency of like he'll get production from a handful, but then somebody gets left out. Like last week it was George Kittle, but on Monday night everyone was getting in, and part of that's Arizona's bad, and that game became a blowout pretty quick. But it was still good to see, which gives me hope and makes me excited to see what San Francisco does moving forward. Then we get to the Vikings, who I will keep at 5, right? That was just their second loss of the year. Take away how ugly that loss was and how disappointing of an outcome that was for Minnesota at home. They're still just a 2-loss team. I want to give them respect. I mean, they're a week removed from taking down Buffalo, who was the number 2 team in my power rankings at the time. I think it was 2. And that was a huge win. I mean, once Darrisaw gets beat by Parsons in that first drive, and then Darrisaw has to leave the game. I mean, it was just rough. This always makes me think back to the Dallas Rams game. We obviously didn't know as much about the Rams yet, but it was just one of those things where, like, dude, Micah Parsons, if he's on the edge, he's gonna wreck this game because that offensive line in front of him is just not gonna have an answer. And ultimately, that's what decided it to me for this Minnesota team, right? They couldn't find an answer against Parsons. Yeah, sure, that strip sack only results in 3 points, but then you go down the other side of the field, and this is a great what if. What if TJ Hawkinson comes down with that fade route left corner of the end zone? That was a beautiful ball drop by Kirk, goes through the hands of Hawkinson. It's hard to say much would change at a 40-3 outcome, but if Minnesota responds to the field goal with a touchdown there for Hawkinson, does that change anything about how the rest of the game plays? I would argue it does, but is it enough to overcome 40-3? I don't know. But I still want to give a ton of respect to this team and what they've done. Andrew Booth Jr. too, first career start. I think I'm excited to see what him and Cam Dantzler can do moving forward as that tandem. So makes me excited for some things moving forward. I just think this is a game where you got to wash it down. And, it's exciting for Minnesota because you play Thursday night, right? Like, you get the NBC game, you get the chance to be back at home, taking on a New England team. That's a chance. We'll see if Kirk can, pull through in primetime. He's obviously got that, monkey on his back where he's struggled in those types of games. But this is the opportunity to kind of put this game behind you pretty quick and then do it on a national stage and make everybody forget about that embarrassing loss to the Cowboys, which leads them to the Dallas Cowboys. They're into the top 4, moving them up 4 spots. I mean, we're not going to see that Dallas performance every week, but we damn sure know they're upside now. We know what they can do. And again, that was just the second loss of the season for the Vikings, actually both coming against NFC East opponents. It was Philly week 2 and then obviously Dallas this past Sunday. So kind of an interesting story there and further solidifying how legit maybe the NFC East is. And, it's Dallas at 4 and it's Philly at 3. So that's a good sign. But, Dallas, the pass rush, Micah Parsons free, Tank Lawrence making big plays. What they can do in the coverage side of it is fantastic. And I think it's safe to say that's the best defense in football right now. I mean, that's just a unit that's rolling. And it was the first time that I really got to see Dak put up some big numbers. And also, how about Tony Pollard? Like 109 receiving yards at the end of the third quarter. And then at that point, I was focusing on other games, worrying about other bets. And I was like, sheesh. There was a point in the game where Pollard had 109 receiving yards and Kirk Cousins had 76 passing yards. That was through like 3 quarters. So, an insane stat. And, I mean, Dallas's offense, that's as good as I've seen him look under Kellen Moore, which I'm a big Kellen Moore guy. So, that's exciting. And if you're a Cowboys fan, you're thinking, okay, we want to score 40 every week because our defense is so good, but if we can get 25-30 and our offense looks that efficient, I mean, I understand why there's a lot of fans for the Cowboys that are thinking, hey, Super Bowl, that should be the goal. And then we do get the Eagles here at 3. You could flip these just based off of how convincing the wins were. Philly has to eke one out late, and especially in those last 2 touchdown drives, it really wasn't Hurts winning through the air. It was more so the run game that kind of carried him, especially Hurts' legs. He had the rushing touchdown to make it 17-16. And then, Dallas is obviously coming off a 37-point win. That's super impressive. But when you take the season as a totality, I'll give the edge to the Eagles here. And also, they're in Indy, which is a team that's going to continue to fight. They've already made a coaching change midseason. They got a little bit of a bump there. They've changed their quarterback to the obviously more efficient, better passer of the two. That Indy team's going to scrap. They're going to fight. They're going to stick around. And there's something about winning that type of game that I think separates good and bad, right? Furthermore, I think that type of game separates great and good, right? Good teams might lose out. Look at the Chargers. Second, you see the talent, they're hanging with a good team, but second half comes and ultimately they fumble it away. Not literally, but they let the game slip through their fingers. Philly didn't. I mean, they didn't play a very good game, and even those last 2 touchdowns, it wasn't the most impressive drives I've seen from Philly this season, but they got the job done and done it on the road against a scrappy team. So I just think you're getting to the playoffs and there's going to be a spot where it's like, hey, we're not playing our best brand of football, but they still managed a way to win games. So I think that's the separating factor between a great team and a good team. They find a way to win games that they shouldn't. And that's what Philadelphia did. So I'm impressed, but that is obviously my bias coming through in those types of situations. Bills move up to number 2. It took a little bit for that offense to get going, but it was nice to see once it did get rolling. You get that touchdown right before half. Stephon Diggs, that felt like the final catalyst. You get the one-handed grab from Gabe Davis, which was nice to see him getting involved again too. Just an impressive win. And also the defense, right? Like, this was a nice return to form. Matt Milano, I think, played a really good game. And anytime you could bottle up Nick Chubb, did a damn good job. And especially a team that wants to play a lot of those too high, looks, cover 2-4-6. I think continuing that run game like they did is thoroughly impressive. And sure, Amari Cooper's going to have his day, whatever. He's going to have his numbers. But I think all in all, I think this was an encouraging sign for that Bills defense. And they got enough offense, especially in the second half. This team's, kind of right back into that conversation. Are they the best team in the league, And right now, they're the number 2 team in the AFC, if my memory serves. And then the Chiefs come in at number 1, the number 1 team in my power rankings. And winning a game against the Chargers like that, that showcases. That was a boxing match. Every time those two teams play, it finds a way to be an awesome game. I think every time Herbert and Mahomes have played, it's been a one-score game. And add another one to the list, right? And, Mahomes is making enough plays. It's tough. I thought Kadarius Toney was going to have a big breakout game. He gets hurt, so interested to see what that wide receiver position looks like moving forward, because obviously Juju Smith-Schuster, Mecole Hardman already missed this game, so having to find production in different names and in different places. So we'll see how, that trend continues, because if these injuries become prolonged and something that is an issue week to week, then I think it becomes that much harder to find an answer. I think it's easier to do that, in one single isolated game or 3/4 of a game. I think it's a lot harder to do that for 4 to 6 weeks throughout the rest of the regular season. So we'll have to wait and see there. But, also nice showing from the defense at certain points. Just a nice team effort, right? It sounds so cliche, but the Chiefs looked like the best team in the league. And, they went toe-to-toe with the Chargers, who, again, always give them a great fight. And I think even people who maybe aren't big Chargers fans, or aren't big Chargers believers, could leave that game and be like, yeah, maybe I have a problem with Brandon Staley, or yeah, maybe I don't love how that defense plays, but that's a good team. That's a good Chargers team. And the Chiefs took care of business in the second half, and they got the late win. And, Travis Kelce is just this ultimate athlete at tight end. So even where I do have some concerns with the pass catchers, maybe if, as long as 87's out there, it feels like they're going to be all right. So, that's just my thoughts, though. Let me hear your thoughts on these power rankings. Let me hear your power rankings down below in the comment section. Do you have Kansas City 1? Do you think it should be someone else? Love to have your thoughts. Who's your favorite team? Where should they fit into this mix? Comment your thoughts and your power rankings down below in the comment section. I respond to every comment, so let's talk about it down below. If you stuck around, watch this video all the way to this point, I can't thank you enough. Be sure to hit that like button. Subscribe if you're new to the channel, want to see more football content in your life. But that is going to do it for me. Hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. And until next time, my name is Tej. I'm signing off.